On Friday of last week, we saw markets rebound quite sharply in response to Fed Chair Jerome Powell's comments at the Jackson Hole Economic Symposium. This is the annual meeting with central bankers from around the world. And he provided comments that seem to suggest that the Fed is getting ready to cut rates in September. So we saw markets rebound. The S&P 500 rallied about 1.5% on the day, a really sharp rally. We saw the Dow hit a new all-time high. We could talk at length about what this means, where we're going from here. I'll just say that markets are at an all-time high. They certainly expect the Fed to cut rates in September. We do as well, but we also acknowledge that there's a whole lot of data between now and when the Fed ultimately meets in the middle of September. We're still waiting for another jobs report. We're still waiting for another inflation report. And so things can change. And the market at these levels is vulnerable to disappointment and to surprises. So we're going to continue to watch the data as we get it and maintain that long-term perspective. Now, one of the things that I'm watching this week is Nvidia, and it's reporting earnings on Wednesday after the market close. This is something we talk about every earnings season. They are always fairly late in the earnings season, so they are one of the last companies to report earnings for the second quarter. But why am I watching them? This is really the bellwether for the AI trade. They get about 40% of their revenues from Meta, which used to be Facebook, from Microsoft, from Alphabet or Google, and from Amazon. So 4 of the largest companies account for about 40% of their revenues. So there's a lot riding on this. But I also mention Nvidia because they have really rallied over the last couple of years. They've seen tremendous strength in their stock price. The company is now valued at $4.4 trillion. They account for about 8% of the overall S&P 500. And so we know that because the S&P 500 is what we call a cap-weighted index, the larger they are in terms of valuation, the more influence they will have. And so at 8%, they can really move the needle on the overall stock market performance. So this is not a call on Nvidia or anything of that nature. We still do own it within our individual stock strategy, but we are diversified. And I think that's really important, that you can have faith, you can have conviction in this AI trade, but you also want to manage risk accordingly. So at 8%, this stock has performed tremendously well. And one of the things I would point out is that I was actually really surprised to learn this morning when I looked at the rankings of stocks in the S&P 500 in terms of year-to-date performance. We talk about the Mag 7 so much, we don't talk about the S&P 493 a whole lot. So of the Mag 7 companies, only 2 of them are ranked in the top 100 in terms of year-to-date performance. That's Nvidia at number 46, if I recall correctly, and that's Meta, or what we used to refer to as Facebook, at number 62. So that means that, yes, their performance, those 2 up about 30% or so this year, it's been great, but there's a whole lot of companies that are performing just as well, if not better. And so I think that's really important, that when we hear about these, because they are worth so much in terms of overall valuation. Meta is approaching close to $2 trillion. Nvidia at 4.4 trillion, contributing about 8% to the S&P 500. But there's a whole lot going on beneath the scenes, and that's why we remain diversified in our portfolios. We certainly believe in things like the AI trade, but we also want to be careful to manage risk accordingly. So one thing that I do want to point out there, so we are focused on Wednesday's earnings. I think that's really the big event for this week. There's some economic data that we will watch, but I really think that the big one this week is going to be earnings, because that'll provide us with the latest read on the artificial intelligence trade. And so we'll see. But fortunately, we're diversified investors, and so if we do see the stock stumble a little bit in response to that, that's why we are diversified within our portfolios. But hopefully it goes well. I'll look forward to seeing everyone next week. If you have any questions between now and then, don't hesitate to reach out to your advisor. See you next week.